Life includes difficult, challenging, and painful experiences. And I'm noticing as I'm even saying that out loud, and right before I was about to say it, my shoulders got a little tight, and I was like, should I say this out loud? But my guess is that when you heard me say that, you probably weren't surprised by what I said. Like, I'm guessing about 0% of you were sort of shocked, like, what? But it's this funny thing, isn't it, that to acknowledge that, say it out loud, is kind of this taboo. It's the weather's been really nice this week, and if I were to say that to somebody, they might say, you jinxed it. Weather's going to get worse now. As if acknowledging even desirable, circumstances, just acknowledging it then makes it more likely, or even invites unfavorable experiences to happen. Like, they wouldn't necessarily happen if you don't talk about them or even acknowledge that they could exist. Which is madness. The thing about the weather is sometimes it's nice and sometimes it's not. And sometimes when it's been nice for many days, it'll continue to be nice. And sometimes when it's been nice for many days, the next day there's a thunderstorm. So, we kind of do the same thing, I think, with our own experiences and acknowledging that life includes challenging, difficult, and painful experiences. There's a word for kind of challenging, difficult, painful experiences that can show up in Zazen practice, and the word is makyo. And so the two parts of that Japanese word include the symbol for demon, ma, and kyo, which means realm, so demon realm. So you can imagine sitting in Zazen if you have a really strong experience. Actually, makyo can be positively or negatively valent, so like a really strong, intoxicating, like vision of enlightenment or something could be a makyo, because you're like in this realm where you're caught in it. Or a really powerful, upsetting memory from the past or image could be a makyo, because it's kind of scary and seems really real. I remember on a sesshin once, probably 2 or 3 days in, I started experiencing this very interesting makyo where the patterns on the carpet I started to hallucinate, frankly. Started to look like demons and dragons, sort of like, not fighting, but just sort of swirling around. And makyo is, it's an experience that can happen on the cushion. And it's an experience that can happen off the cushion. I think sometimes there's an idea with insight practices, zazen and mindfulness practices, that when you sit on the 3x3, mine's memory foam cushion, that somehow this area is insulated from life, and like the area on the cushion is going to be different than the area outside the cushion. But you bring your whole history and your whole life and the whole universe with you onto that cushion. In the secular world of mindfulness, in the therapy world, there's starting to be research coming out that looks into some of the difficult, challenging, and painful experiences that people who are doing meditation in the course of therapy are starting to report. And there's a lot of alarm about it, to be frank. In fact, the research term they're using for these experiences, meditation-related adverse events. Just like they would describe an adverse event in like a medication trial. and there's a lot of alarm about it. One of the studies I looked at this week kind of looked at predictors, and one of them is that the longer you practice in terms of minutes, and more frequently you practice, and the amount of years you practice predicts the likelihood that you'll experience these difficult, challenging, or painful experiences. And there's also some data that suggests if you've had difficult experiences in your life, trauma, you're having emotional difficulties, that when you practice meditation you can experience things that are consistent with that. And there's now some questioning about whether or not practicing things like meditation, mindfulness, and it's a really broad category at this point. Mindfulness is sort of like pumpkin spice now. Pumpkin spice used to be like part of pumpkin pie, and now it's in the fall. I saw pumpkin spice candles last year, and the irony is like there's no pumpkin in pumpkin spice, and I kind of have concerns that a lot of things that are called mindfulness actually has no dharma in it, but I digress. But mindfulness has been sort of kind of introduced to the West as almost like this panacea, that it's going to create this tensionless, stressless state, that it's going to bring equanimity, it's going to bring peace, it's going to bring sort of like freedom from pain and suffering. And there are experiences like that, and there is some research to suggest that happens. And if you've been practicing Zazen for a while, you've likely noticed some of the fruits of your practice. And also, it doesn't preclude the possibility, maybe the probability, that you're going to experience the full range of human experiences. And part of life is difficult, challenging, and painful experiences. So there's concern now that maybe mindfulness, and meditation isn't for everyone. We shouldn't necessarily, if you're in the therapy world, just introduce people to that, to these practices without preparing them, without the proper context, which I think is a healthy thing. But this is an issue that we've in our world, the world of Buddhism and Zen, have known about forever. I remember Roshi Kennedy saying to me once on a retreat in Dokusan, we were talking about Zen practice, and I think I was sharing some of my struggles with him, and he said, Andy, Zazen is a practice of last resort. Like, most people come to our practice like this, where you sit fearlessly and face yourself after trying all sorts of things. And that's the story of the Buddha. He sat under the Bodhi tree and just sat and faced himself without any techniques, after trying the most extreme techniques available at the time, ascetic practices, punishing the body, to try to somehow be liberated from challenging, painful, difficult experiences. So Zazen and mindfulness practice are not about escape. They are not about that at all. And when difficult experiences come up in your practice, and if you practice for long enough, they will. And depending on the circumstances of your life, the contents of your Zazen may be really difficult. It's important to acknowledge those experiences, and this is where it's really helpful to have a teacher who you can talk to about those experiences. And it's important to have a sangha, knowing that we're all sitting together with our own suffering and facing it together. And it's important to have the Dharma, the teachings, that provide a framework for helping us to get our minds and hearts around what it means to suffer and how that fits in. When I had shared the Makyo experience of the dragons and demons on the carpet with Bruce and Sensei Bruce, and he was Sensei Bruce that time, in Dokusan, we had a really great discussion about it. He said, yeah, these things can happen. He shared some of his experiences with me, and what he helped me to do is acknowledge them and let them go. And it wasn't dismissive. It wasn't, those are just experiences. It was, let's talk about it, let's sort of look at it and acknowledge it and not push it away, but, let it go. There's another part of kind of the let it go thing, though, that I wanted to mention, and that's one of the things that can happen is if you get into sort of the habit of meeting any sort of pain, discomfort, or challenge in your practice on the cushion or off the cushion all the time with a sense of, it's just pain, just let it go, you can start to become numb and insensitive to your own experience. And that can seem like the ideal way to be. And in fact, I've seen teachers, maybe not deliberately, but in their sort of manner and way of speaking and teaching, actually perpetuate the idea that the goal here is to somehow become numb, and no matter what you're experiencing, just not really pay much attention to it. In fact, if you read some of the things that the ancestral teachers wrote about discomfort, challenge, and pain, and even contemporary teachers, you can get the sense that that's kind of a rule almost to follow. Roshi Bruce used to like to say, pain is the first barrier of Zen. The implication there being that you're going to experience some discomfort in your zazen if you sit for a while, and then you have to sort of open up to it and allow it to be there so it's not a barrier. And Uchiyama Roshi, his advice about pain in zazen is to not struggle with it, not try to endure it, not try to push it away, just allow it to be. Just trust the zazen posture. Again, the implication there is just it's part of practice, just let it be, you don't necessarily do anything about it. Dogen doesn't even talk about even physical pain much, let alone acknowledging, sort of emotional or psychological pain. And I'm not sure, maybe that's because he lived, in the 12th century in Japan with typhoon and earthquake and, a culture where, someone who is in a higher social class could just murder a peasant in front of them for no reason. Maybe because it was a time where famine and disease were common, so the knee pain that you would experience in zazen wasn't even something worth noting. But there's a danger, I think, in not acknowledging, at least acknowledging these experiences. And I'm grateful to one of my students, Jiryu, who sort of pointed something out to me about a year ago. I had been dealing with really, really bad back pain and shoulder pain for a while, and I made room for it in my practice. And Jiryu noticed in kinhin and periods between practice that I was, as she put it, you're moving like a person who's in a lot of pain. And she said it to me a couple of times over a few months, and my reaction to her was, it's just part of practice, But then there came a time during sesshin where I was in so much pain I actually had to skip a period of zazen. 3 whole periods. I've never skipped a period of Zazen. And I realized that maybe I should pay attention to this pain. And so I went for physical therapy and it got better. But, there's a I think something that can happen is you can get attached to this idea that meeting your own suffering with a sense of it's just pain is the way to go. It's like you're sort of enlightened or something, and really it's just ego. I wouldn't sit in a chair when my back hurt for a while because that's not what students do. So, this place where we're acknowledging challenging, painful, and difficult experiences is sort of a place of not yes, but not no. Not indulging in them, but also not pushing them away. Observing them, noticing them. Not holding on to them, but acknowledging them for what they are and seeing if, maybe those experiences have something to tell us and teach us. Another example in, sort of life off the cushion is I was doing consultation with a social worker who was talking about a client of hers she was working with who was in the service, in the Army, I think, and he showed up for a session and he had like what looked like just some sort of liquid coming out of his ear, like clear liquid. And she said, "Oh, were you just like swimming or something?" And he said, "Oh no, I got into a motorcycle accident last week, and yeah, I just signed out AMA because I didn't want to be there at the hospital anymore, and I had a head injury and stuff, and this is just some cerebrospinal fluid." And social worker said, "You need to go back to the hospital. You've got a serious brain injury." And he said, "I'm just going to embrace the suck. That's just part of life." And, if you're familiar with military culture, that phrase, embrace the suck, is often used as a sort of expression of being tough and resilient in situations when escape is not going to be honorable or it actually is not possible. So think about somebody in like a forward operating post in the mountains of Afghanistan where they really can't leave. So, but then it becomes kind of this, I'm going to be numb and not pay attention to any of my suffering at all and not do anything about it because I'm tough and resilient. So, difficult, challenging, and painful experiences are part of life. And they will come up from time to time in your practice. And so what I would encourage you to do is acknowledge them. And if you're having these types of experiences, don't keep them to yourself. Talk to your teacher about them. Make sure that you're not just blowing them off because maybe you think that's the Buddha way or something, And also, maybe experiment with not indulging in them. It's not yes, but not no. Not clinging to them and sort of struggling with them, but also not, blowing them off. Because, either of those sort of responses rob you of the lessons your experience has to teach you. And sometimes discomfort has a lot to teach us. And sometimes what it has to teach us is stop doing a thing that is causing you discomfort or get some help for it. And sometimes it teaches us to learn how to allow that discomfort to be there and not struggle. Not yes, not no. as always, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share my practice with you.